I met Gavin a couple of years ago when I did some work for Enterprise Ireland. Enterprise Ireland were looking for opportunities for develop some of their products, particularly in the building schools for the future. And I met Gavin, and we met at BET last year. One of the few companies that started to go at the mobile learning perspective from an assessment point of view. So if you're interested in assessment and mobile learning, Gavin's got a lot to share from both Ireland and Australia. Okay, so Gavin.
Okay, so I think the story about how we got into mobile learning was we were working with the New South Wales government in Sydney in Australia, and there we're delivering large-scale on-screen examinations on computers. We're delivering one GCSE equivalent exam to 60,000 kids across the entire state of New South Wales. And I went back to Ireland and I said to the Irish government, look, this is what we're doing in New South Wales, would you like to do that? And they came back and said, look, no, we're not ready to do on-screen exams in Ireland yet, but we want to have a solution for the oral Irish language exam. What can you do for that? Now, it would have been very, very easy for me to plug in a microphone into the computer and add a question type into our on-screen assessment delivery platform to do kind of spoken exams for the oral Irish language. But there was something kind of unnatural about that. It was also something it was going to be very difficult to support across 600 high schools across Ireland, how you support microphones and broadband and different types of computers and Macs and Linux and everything else. And it just seemed a lot more logical to use something that every student has as something that's built for speaking and listening, and that's a mobile phone. So as a natural interface, students don't kind of feel silly speaking to a phone. It's very natural. Everybody has one. It's very familiar. And also, we kind of feel, and I kind of feel that some mobile learning initiatives are, they're brilliant and they're far-reaching and everything else, and we learn something from them, but not really kind of scalable. They're not really something we can do in 2009 with today's technology in a kind of a scalable and sustainable way. Here we were looking for something to do with the student's own device, with the mobile phone. And we kind of feel that it wasn't just technology for technology's sake. We're using the best device available for the task, which was speaking and listening, for the learning of languages specifically. So we'd use a phone, and we're not using any kind of smartphone or anything else. We're using a phone call. You're dialing a number. So a landline will work, mobile phone will work, Skype will work. And we've started, as I'll demo in a few minutes, we have an iPhone application and so on we did for the Open University. It'll work on any phone, and we're trying to get to the lowest common denominator of technology here, the phone call. It's not even technology anymore, it's something that just works, it's a phone call. So we've deployed this notably with the Irish government in Irish, a couple of projects there. In Australia, we did across 3 states for the teaching and learning of Indonesian, and we did it with the Open University here in the UK. There's a lot more languages and deployments as well. One interesting one, which I'll touch on if I have time at the end, is the Royal College of Surgeons in Dublin, where we're not doing languages anymore. We're doing role plays around for medical students, doing doctor-patient role plays and so on, which is really, really interesting. And if you have any time, I'll show that to you later on. So how it works, and I have the Debbie McGee to my Paul Daniels, Rod from the Open University, who's going to do a demo from Europe. Do you want to come up and do that?
Okay, well, we're going to try and do this actually live using a mobile phone, so this is going to be interesting. But just to give you a bit of background as to why we worked with Learnosity. For those people who don't know the Open University, we've got a lot of distance learning students, and I don't mean correspondence course, I mean actually we're trying to use the latest technologies that are available to us and are common enough to use with our students. And one of the things that came forward was colleagues in the Department of Languages wanted to try out a new way of getting audio assessment, different ways of getting spoken French in particular back into the system to actually then assess that. We tried a number of different types of exercises, and I'm just going to run through one now. So hopefully we'll be able to just dial in and get going. So I'll just call. I don't know whether you'll be able to hear this, hopefully you will. He says.
Speakerphone?
Yeah, it is on speakerphone. Still trying to dial it, I think. Okay, I'll do the old manual method then. Let's try 3, 3. And we tried to use a number which was actually going to be cheap enough for the students not to complain about.
Yeah, I can call it.
You can call it. Okay, cool.
Brilliant.
I think the phone network is letting us down, actually, at this point.
Okay, that isn't going to work. Yeah, it was always going to happen, wasn't it? I find that with demos, the more people watching, the more likely it is to go wrong. There's about 3 or 4 live demos we're going to give in a row. So I'm going to try one other number for a different project. See if this works any better.
Welcome to the Learning Federation.
Okay, it's not for the
Mobile
Open University.
applications for the Language Learning Project. Please enter your student ID.
So,
Please enter your student PIN. You are successfully logged into the system. There are 5 options, 1 for classification test, 2 for hotels, 3 for directions, 4 for photos, and 5 for food.
so this is the Indonesian project in Australia, and I'll just pick one of those options.
Welcome to your conversation. For each of the following questions, record your answer. When you've finished recording, press #. You will have an opportunity to re-record if you are unhappy with your answer. Press 1 if you understand these instructions. Press 2 if you will. Section number 1. The task is to answer the following questions about your daily life and your interests. Question number 1. Apa nama jalan Anda dan sudah berapa lama Anda tinggal di sana?
Does anybody here speak Indonesian? No. Good, neither do I, so I'll record an answer.
Here is your answer.
Does anybody here speak Indonesian? No. Good. Neither do I. So I'll record an answer.
Are you happy with your answer?
I'm actually really happy with that answer.
Press 2 for no.
This demo's gone really well so far, so...
Question number 2. Coba ceritakan perjalanan Anda dari sekolah
And this time
ke
I'll leave a
rumah.
very short answer.
Here is your answer.
Short answer.
Please answer each question as fully as you can.
So it prompts me for a bit more information. Now, that demo can go on all day, but you can see what's happened there. You're calling up, you're answering questions that the teacher set for you, or from a general pool, and you're recording answers for that. So yeah, I guess, do you want to say a couple of things that we learned from the different types of content we did in the Open University?
Sure. Well, if we had the French example as opposed to the Indonesian example, it's pretty much the same thing, except that what we wanted to do was actually build on some of the DVD-ROM work that we've got with as interactive elements. And by that I mean that we could actually then use a Learnosity system to actually structure basically a conversation. So you heard the prompt, then you'd also hear a bit of stimulus, a bit of context as to what was going on, and then the student could then record in turn, and at the end of the conversation that had been created, you could actually review the whole thing, and then you could hear your voice actually within that conversation. So it's then actually allowing people to hear their own voice, hear their own accent, in line with the model answers as they were given, to actually hear how it would form as part of a conversation. And then the next stage is what we're doing is we're looking at the types of activities that we did, and we realised that listening activities you can't really do because it would be much better to be able to review those, but this is really, really well suited for speaking type activities. And the next stage is to actually work with different courses in our Department of Languages to see if it can be used as formally part of the assessment as opposed to a formative set of exercises that we tried so far. Okay?
Thanks, Rod. So one thing I'll say here is that the instructions given to the students were, here's a URL, here's a username and password, or a student number and PIN. There was no manual, there was no just, these are the instructions they were given. When they went to the URL, they got the instructions here. I was just kind of, what the idea was, it was just that simple to use. There was no setup, it was just take out your phones and do it. And if I was feeling really ambitious, I'd let you all do it now, but I think I've learned my lesson on that. There's the activities for revision there. We had a number of them. And you type in an activity code in the Open University, you call in and it says which activity you want to do. We want to do 4, 3, 6, type that in, and there's some questions and answers, or there's a grammar drill or whatever it is. So what happens now is we go into the a teacher goes into the web application, can see all the questions that have been answered here, and can play back the audio instantly in the web interface. It's visualized there for them, so if there's kind of 5 minutes of silence or something, there's just going to be a red line, so you can kind of drag that blue bar across and you can kind of listen to things again and again. You can give some feedback here, in this case, 3 out of 10. You can look at the, this kid needs to work on their past tense and so on. The student can go into their own web interface, can again see the question, can listen to their own answer again, and can see their own feedback. While they're in there, there's a feedback there. While they're in there, they can access some podcasts of the questions and answers from that session, or the questions, answers, and sample answers from that session. So the idea here is, even without the teacher's feedback for the students, which obviously is going to add a lot of workload for the teacher, there is sample answers in the system already. So the student can go on and do kind of self-assessment, listen to their own answer again, and then listen to sample answers from other students attempting the same question, or fluent native and non-native speakers attempting the same question. The questions were all designed to be kind of open-ended questions. What are your hobbies? I'm going to say I like to play guitar, I like music. Somebody else is going to say like cycling, somebody else is going to say football, whatever it is. And the idea here is there's sample answers in here for a student to come along, listen to the question, and listen to a bunch of sample answers, fluent, native, non-native speakers, other students in their own class, other students in other classes. How these sample answers are created is, as you're marking the answers, you click that sample box as a teacher. And that now is available to all the students in your class as a sample answer. And it's kind of a user-generated content here, but in a kind of controlled way. You can make anything available to your own students, and then an admin user comes along later on and can make it available to other teachers and students in all the other schools. So this user-generated content applies to questions, sample answers, text chat simulators, which we'll come to later on, and pools of SMS words. How we record the questions, and I was going to give a live demo of this, but you basically type in the wording of the question, and you record the question in the browser. That question is now available for your own students. As a teacher, you record a question, and that question is now available for your own students to use. So the other thing I want to show you is, with regard to the Open University, is you can come along and, let's get the password for this, 4461. As a student, we have an iPhone application available. So I can log in here. Come on. And this will bring me through all the conversations I've done already, and allow me to access my own answers. Oh, come on. This is going well. Okay. Okay. So allows you to access all the conversations you've done before, see them all in context, and hopefully listen to the answers. And this does work, okay? So here's one of the questions I'm going to dig into. Here's the question itself.
Vous mangez des escargots?
Oui, souvent.
The response from the student.
Oui, j'en mange souvent.
And the sample answer.
Oui, j'en mange souvent.
For some of the more interactive sessions, I'm not sure which ones are which. I think this one here was more of a conversation, so you can kind of...
Répondez aux questions en utilisant I. Qu'est-ce qu'on trouve dans une quincaillerie?
On y trouve de tout.
Est-ce que tu fais souvent tes courses dans un hypermarché?
Oui, j'y fais souvent mes courses.
So as Rod was mentioned there's kind of more of a dialogue here. You can kind of listen to your own responses again in the context of a conversation. And again, you can dig into any of the questions and listen to sample answers and see where you're going wrong there. Oh, sorry, let's go back to... So we've done this with the Irish government. What they did there was they wanted to increase the proportion of the exam that was spoken language, and for the oral exam it was 40% now as a result of this project. And we did it with the National Council for Curriculum Assessment and the National Centre for Technology and Education. One of the funny things I'll show you about this, well, every student basically in Ireland, from the whole way through primary school and secondary school, has to do Irish. We do a lesson a day, and we all leave with about 15 words of Irish. It's really, honestly, it's really bad. And what we want to do is kind of change the assessment to be more of make it more of a living language, make it more practical around the oral components, make it 40% oral. So we did it in one school in 2007, which I'm going to show you now. And you can see from this school here, if you can see at the back, at the window there, that the school is in a race course. And what happened was there was no planning permission for the school. The school wasn't built yet, so they did what any government would do. Obviously, they rented out the local race course and had the classes in the corporate boxes and the bars in the local race course. Now, brilliant teachers, brilliant management. The school has now been built, and I was there last week on the official opening. It's a great school and great facilities now. But for 2 years, they ran this school in the corporate boxes of a local racecourse, and they disassembled the entire school when a race would happen, so that they would take down everything off the wall, take the desks out, the whole works, put it in a porta cabin in the car park. That was okay. They only had to do it 17 times. That's true. They had to do it 17 times, disassemble the entire school. In the project we just did there, which lasted the year, we had nearly 900 hours of calls to the system, 15,000 or so calls made. There's some information on the website about that. The report isn't for the second project there isn't out yet. It'll be out over the next couple of months, and keep an eye on the website for that. But basically, there's a significant improvement in all aspects of the language from using this. Obviously, oral improved massively, but the whole, all aspects of the language. It's kind of student-driven learning here. They never would have bothered before doing it. And show you briefly what we're doing in Australia. We did this in 3 states, Indonesian language learning. Bottom line was, across a 6-week pilot project, the increase in the spoken language abilities went up 11% across all students. In certain classes that worked harder at it, and the teachers worked harder at it, we had a 20 and 30% increase in spoken language abilities just in a 6-week period. It's not so much the technology as it's that focus on spoken language was never possible before. If you're a French teacher, you can't say, no, go home and talk to yourself in French for half an hour. That's the first sign of madness, I'd say. You also can't say, okay, talk among yourself in French. As a teacher, you can't go around, you can't listen to these conversations, you can't supervise them, there's no learning outcomes here. And 15-year-old boys, of course, won't bother. But we found here that this facilitated those 2 things, this peer-to-peer speaking. So there is an official report there from the Australian government on this, where it shows these findings, this 20-30% increase in certain classes in spoken language abilities. Now, I'm going to show you just very, very briefly. One thing I haven't mentioned so far was the voice chat. What we're lacking here so far is it's question, answer, and that's kind of a false thing. It's not really real communication. 2 native speakers will stop each other, interrupt each other, and so on. So we want to model that. It's just like I explained a second ago. If I say to you, okay, talk among yourselves, I can't listen to it. It's not an assessment exercise, it's not a learning exercise. What we can do now with this application is you get everybody to call up at the same time, in the same room, or across in different countries, and so on. And 2 students are paired up, and they get half a question each. So you get, imagine you're in Paris and you need to find directions to the Eiffel Tower, and I get, imagine you're in Paris and somebody's going to stop you and ask you for directions. We get connected in a phone call with another student and have a conversation. The conversation is recorded. The teacher can come along later on, can listen to it, can hear one student in one ear, a second student in the other ear, and can here who's speaking at any one time visually, and can mark 2 students at the same time. And of course, you can do it as well. What if you had 1,000 students in Paris learning English, 1,000 students in London learning French, and then one day they all call up and they all speak English, Tuesday they all call up and they all speak French. Just kind of peer-to-peer learning and assessment. It just wasn't really possible before in a kind of moderated and anonymous way. So that's the general overview. I think we're out of time a little bit, so I'll take questions, I suppose.